Okay, well, how are you doing, man? It's been a big day.
Yeah.
There's so much to talk about, but everyone's been hearing this new record. Could you like share with us like how this project came to be? What brought it to life?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, just a little bit of a backstory. I work with electronic music for the last 20 years, but with Bulgarian folklore, I started back in 2005. And since then, I've released about 4 or 5 albums. I lost count. With Bulgarian traditional instruments and electronic sounds. I'm always looking for new collaborators to jump into a new project and create new music in this field. And since I met Asia and Georgi, they asked me to make a track together and see what will happen. So we did one last year, about a year ago, like in January or something. It was a drum and bass version of a Bulgarian folklore song, and it went really well. Like everybody loved it on the social networks, and people asked us to play it live and stuff like this. So we decided to make a party. Despite the pandemic stuff, we want to throw out a concert when the restrictions was loosened up a little bit. So it happened back in June last year, 2020. It's one of these parties called One Man Party, where I play 8 hour set with my projects from the beginning to the end.
Wow.
So yeah,
I'm tired just hearing that, man. That's crazy.
no, it's fine.
Carry on. Sorry.
I've done it over 10 times
Wow.
already, and it's a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
And people love the concept, just in general, coming for the experience, because I don't play the same style. I started with ambient, with my ambient projects, and then going into techno, because I got two techno projects as well, then into Bulgarian folklore, electronica kind of vibe, into dubstep, and then finishing with my drum and bass alias, which is the most popular around the world. So far, I've released the most records as Cooh. That's my drum and bass thing.
Right.
But yeah, so for this party, I always bring a live show for the highlights of the party, and I invited Asia and Georgi to make music together for this event. And actually, in about 2 weeks, we made all the tracks,
Whoa.
all the demos.
No way.
Yeah, because I'm just super excited when making music. So I mean,
You get super excited, so you love that.
the tracks doesn't sound like they sound now in the finished version, of course,
Right.
but still, it was really how to say, intense. A few days of throwing ideas back and forth, and we made it without even meeting each other.
Wow.
We did it over distance. It was in March, April, when we was pushing hard on making music together. So they were sending me voice memos on their phones,
Wow.
sung over click track, and then I was dropping the demos in Ableton, and I was building around the harmonies and the beats and everything. So then later on, they got hold of a Zoom recorder, and they made like better versions of the vocals, and also resung some of the tracks, because we changed some of the tempos and harmonies. So we did another demo version, and this was the demos we played at the show in June. So we made about an hour and 15 minutes, brand new music in no time.
Wow. That's amazing.
And yeah, so that's how the music was born. And then I decided, okay, we have to start fresh, because they also come from a very famous band in Bulgaria called Oratnica.
Mhm.
And it's a world famous band for folklore and fusion music. They blend Bulgarian folklore with didgeridoo and drums, and yeah, it's really amazing project of them. So I wanted to start fresh and not calling it Ivan Shopov versus Uratnica, because it's not the full band. They're just 2 members from there. So anyway, that's like the short story, and
that's amazing.
Not so short, but yeah.
And so once you had like those demo versions and you performed live, did you guys then like record properly, or how many of the kind of original things stayed?
Well, it was the whole summer when I had the time to redo all the tracks, because we was forcing ourselves to do it ready for June, but then I wanted to record everything in September properly with the latest versions from me as well, and so I worked through the summer on the arrangements, on the edits. I was changing like the tracks completely overnight, just having fresh new ideas, and we went for one month on the seaside as well with my family, so I was spending every night and day with my laptop and headphones and just making new versions of the tracks. Also, when the album started getting like into some sort of a shape, I started inviting more guest musicians to jump in on board, and that's how we got this huge variety of musicians joining, because we had the time. I mean, we had a couple of months for this, and in September we recorded the vocals in a proper studio with proper microphone and everything. Also the bagpipe and the didgeridoo, and I started mixing the album from that point on.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it took me another 2 months for final production, mixing, and then another month for mastering and everything.
That's incredible. And so, I mean, it's amazing that you got to start a project during the pandemic, but still got that little window to play live. And yeah. I'm kind of curious. I mean, obviously you've made a gajillion projects, but did you learn stuff about the songs on that live event that made you completely rethink them? Yeah, absolutely. We actually played this Club Night, and we played another 3 festivals, because Bulgaria was not so strict in the summer. We performed on two more festivals and 2 more gigs, actually. Wow.
So it was a completely brand new name, brand new project, but there was really well responded. I mean, a lot of people came to the shows, and because we're both coming from pretty like well-known bands and experience, like background, so sure. It wasn't like a scary thing. Oh my god, I'm like completely new now to the scene. It's gonna happen. Yeah. But with these shows and the music, we learned a lot, especially myself, because I was doing the production, about the tracks and the structures, and what kind of shows we have to get from this music, because in the beginning it was all about the party vibe, having much more bass and drums involved, and then slowly some of the tracks became more ambient oriented, more like musical, like cinematic. For example, Iano, the 7th track, I think, or 6th, it was a drum and bass track in the beginning. Oh, so really? It was very how to say, like shaky and fast, and then it became
I gotta say, like what you're saying there, just with like the whole record becoming very cinematic, like the kind of depth and the atmosphere of the record is really incredible.
Yeah, that's where I spent most of my time, actually.
Really amazing. So it's out today. How do you feel?
Oh, it was ready in November, so
right.
I feel really blessed and, I would say, excited about the release, because we've waited for so long to have it out, and finally having people to properly listen to the songs. And I'm so used to work on a big time frames for albums, because to have an album, in my opinion, is to to publish a book. Right. Similar kind of thing. You have to be sure that the covers are right, the ingredients are all in place, that it's interesting to start reading from the first page to the end, and then when you finish you want to read it again. So that's you can't do this in a week time.
Yeah.
I mean, even the demos was done so quick to tell the story, and through the atmosphere and through all the sounds and production, it took all that time. But yeah, finally out, already getting so much feedback from people, like people shouting on the phone, like, what the hell, what's going on? This is so amazing. Already using the music for their videos, showing Bulgaria, because we got a lot of, let's say, video guys shooting with drones and stuff, and they're always looking for new modern approach to Bulgarian folklore. So this is kind of a cool thing to represent Bulgaria, its nature and its beauty, complemented with the music that we've done. So I'm really glad it works that way.
Great. Well, I kind of that's perfect kind of segue, because I wanted to ask you about when you said you kind of consciously started in around 15 years ago, 2005 or something, like wanting to incorporate Bulgarian elements into your music. So I'm wondering where you were at before then. You know, you're kind of making predominantly electronic music, and what was like the thought process that led you up to going, you know what, I need to draw from this stuff that's from my own backyard?
Well, I was starting my music career as a guitarist. I was playing on a bass guitar in a metal band, so I always wanted to play an instrument again. But when I was going into music production with the PC, I was really understanding that I can't focus on both at the same time. So I was focusing mainly on getting better beats and mixes and all this stuff. And I started asking people to join in for collaborations, and they jam on top of the DJ sets or just in the studio. So well on control with the beats and all the electronics. So that became like super interesting kind of flow for me, and I've always wanted to make something with Bulgarian folklore, because I grew up in a family where music was all the time in the air. My grandmother was singing all these Bulgarian folklore songs for me, and I was learning this kind of singing in school because it's part of our tradition here. So it's not like, hey, now I want to be modern, you know, let's incorporate something interesting. It's been there through the whole time. And then I remember the first time, it was about 2003 or something. I chopped up some samples from a jazz, Bulgarian folklore jazz CD with the most famous Bulgarian flute player, Kaval flute. It's called Teodosi Spasov. And I was chopping some samples and putting them on top of my drum and bass beats and tracks, and I was like, wow, this is so good. I don't have to have a player all the time. I can just sample them. So it turns out a couple of years later, the producer that releases most of the Bulgarian folklore jazzy kind of fusion albums got hold of me, and he heard some of my electronic stuff, and he was like, hey, you want to do a remix? And I was like, wow, what kind of remix? So he was like, yeah, you can remix now Teodosi Spasov and these Bulgarian choirs that we have released and produced with our label. And I was like, crazy. So he gave me like 15 of his albums and asked me to pick up any song.
Wow.
And then they provided me stems. So that was 2005, and I made this record that never got released because of they got into some issues with the musicians, whatever. Not my not my deal there, but I did all the job. And in 2 years, we had this remix album that was with all the Bulgarian folklore styles and instruments. And when it was time to understand that we're not releasing this one, we was not giving up. We were just, okay, let's build a new album out of this. We're just gonna delete the stems that we can't use, and we will just build something else on top. So we did, and Teodosi was the only guy that was like super into it, and he was like, wow, finally I can hear myself into this modern sounds and atmospheres that is saw my thing, and he decided to keep his parts, and he played on more tracks, and then we became a trio, the producer, me, and Teodosi, and since then we released 2 albums. The project is called Balkan Sky.
All right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this one was started in 2009. 2012 we released Orenda, was the second album from the project, and then in 2017 I released another album with Bulgarian folklore singers called Kanatica, which got me really on top of the line of Bulgarian folklore electronic kind of fusion in Bulgaria. This album got so popular that it was featured on national TV a couple of times in advertisement. Just recently I got a call from the Ministry of Tourism in Bulgaria asking me to contribute again a track from the record for their new Bulgaria advertising kind of thing. So yeah, that's when I decided that this is the thing I want to do from now on, just continue developing this fusion of Bulgarian folklore and electronic music. And
it sounds like it's like quite a natural combination for you. It's
yes.
Like, because you know, like some people, if it's like classical music is like hundreds of years old, and like some people do that, but this sounds like music that was just like in your life and is all around you. So it's very natural just to do everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I never felt pushed or following some sort of a trend to do it. It was just this pure inspiration from hearing the performers doing their art and imagining the harmonies and beats and all the production around it, because I've got so much experience already, 15 years into this.
Yeah.
So I'm not starting yesterday. Hey, let's make Bulgarian folklore electronica now.
Yeah.
See how this will turn out. So also the following for this kind of music that I built over the years was quite big. So now new album, no brainer. It will go quick as possible for the limited version of the vinyl and so on. But yeah, expanding all the time. I want the world to hear this music. So I'm so thankful to you for inviting me and doing this this beat battle today.
It's an honor, man. Like, I was so excited when I heard your stuff. Like, so I guess we could let everyone know, did we met on Complete Producer Network, or just like on Instagram or something like that?
Yeah.
And
I was just following you on Instagram, and you hit me back on the same day, like, wow, I'm impressed with your art, and you do also music. So I was like, wow, amazing. Can I get some track feedback? Then you invite me to the Complete Producers Network.
Yeah.
And that's when I showed my music to the network. And I got some really cool feedback. And then we start chatting, and here we go.
Awesome. Yeah. I don't know, I just think it's wonderful. Like, there's just so much incredible music in the world. And actually, I think Björk actually sent me to see a Bulgarian choir in Reykjavik when I was working with her in like 2006. So I think she first introduced me to like Bulgarian vocal music, and then
amazing.
So I saw that concert, and that was like incredible. So I've always had a soft spot. So it's, you know, just really exciting hearing what you're doing, and really just how like seamless the whole combination is. You know, I think like that's just deeply impressive, not just on a cultural level, but just like straight up on a production level. Like, I know it's a real challenge to get electronics and kind of live elements to just mesh together. You know, it's a lot of work. So can we go on to like a whole nerd out thing now?
Okay.
We kind of got a bit of a sense of like your arc. For people who are like watching on here, or even for me, like what are the biggest things that you watch out for, or just to really make sure that electronics and acoustic stuff like live in the same world, or that they lock together?
Well, so if I open the project in my mind, in like the general technical aspect, I would say the blending between all the elements is my 15 return tracks that I have on almost every finished project like this, because I love to use the same reverb and time effects on the vocals and live instruments, and then the same returns on the electronic parts for some of the percussion, and that's one of the things that kind of glued them together. Another thing is just really listening carefully about frequency and compression. I don't over compress my music. I don't like to squash things too much. I know people are freaking out about compression and all this stuff, but I think it's more about acoustic music and making like all the acoustic elements work together in a mix. For me, it's all about EQ and saturation. Instead of compression, I use mostly saturation, and two of my sent return tracks are actually Culture Voucher from UAD, and sometimes Decapitator as a saturation, and some really heavy distortion that I use in super small amounts on almost the entire mix. So this is instead of running things into the same machine. Yeah.
do you blend like your whole mix distortion? Is that like things that you send individually to distortion, or do you have like a parallel of your whole mix that you kind of bring in with that, or is it a bit of both?
Yeah, depends on the case. For some tracks, I just have one distorted one distortion on the return track, and slowly introducing with the sense a little bit of the warmth to each element. So sometimes I solo this channel and it sounds like garbage. It's just like like super trashy. But when I mute it, the whole mix just becomes dull and unglued. So instead of doing parallel compression, I do parallel distortion.
Amazing.
And sometimes I do the distressor as a parallel compressor as well, just to get the vocals with other elements.
Amazing. So it's really kind of like it's like getting the harmonics of everything to kind of start to interact and mesh together.
Yeah.
That is very smart. I like that. Very cool. And I mean, do you use like, you know, super boring, but are you do you use like gentle compression just for a bit of control, but it's not like smashing compression for tone or stuff? Or
yeah, for example, on the vocals, my vocal chain for the album, I nailed it for the first time on the Nidello track, on the last track, and I loved the simplicity of the chain. I mean, of the result. It was the first time I could hear the vocal so much in my face. And so much space without using reverb and like the cheap version to become space gold, you know.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I kind of copied this chain into a user library and just I used it again and again through the whole album, and then adjusted it to the needs of the mixes. But what I had in there was predominantly UAD plugins, starting with preamp, then Pool Tech EQ, then the Airway, then some other EQ depending on what I was looking for, then de-esser, then another EQ, then another compressor, then another EQ, and Soothe too. I use it a lot. Yeah. Killing all the resonances I was getting from the harmonics from the EQs. And then at the end, another final compressor. So
great.
Each vocal channel I used about 3 or 4 compressors, each of them working super
just gently. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
And I've learned that by accident, just adding more and wondering what's gonna happen. And then I figure out it's a trick to make good records. Don't use the same compressor to do all the job.
Totally.
But get a couple more and just expand your chain that way. And another great trick about vocals and in general the mixes for my tracks was when I asked on the Complete Producer Network, what's your favorite UAD plugins? And you pointed out to the Chorus D.
Yeah.
Now called Studio D, or what was the dimension? Yeah. So this thing is now on the entire record.
Oh my god, amazing!
Yeah. Thank you so much for this tip. It's priceless.
Great. No, that's a good box. That's really cool. So I mean, have you been kind of like mixing all your own stuff since the start of your career as well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And did you have any I mean, not just mixing, but just like in terms of the whole process of making music. Can you think of any kind of big breakthroughs that you've had where you just suddenly heard things differently or understood things in a different way?
Well, one of the biggest breakthroughs in my music career was getting to know Ether Audio, the guys that are now building all my studio gear, because I was so getting lost into the standard speakers and sound card situation, and at one point I was checking my music at their studio, and I was like blown away by the clarity and all the details I could get from the music, all the stereo, all the bass details. Like I could hear for the first time the kick and the bass separate from the same frequency. Like all the transients and everything, I was like blown away, and I was, what the fuck is going on? I need to have this sound in front of me so I can make better music. And I saved some money because they're proper high-end audiophile kind of company. They don't make cheap customer products. So yeah, about 6,000 euro later, I had these speakers and the sound card that they built. It's called Ether Audio DAC, DAC for music. So with this setup and new cables, every time I wanted to expand and understand more about the sound, I was just, it was so easy. Like I would get really lost and blurry with other equipment I've used over the years. And yeah, that's why I'm also so quick in getting mix downs and mastering, because they're so accurate. You can't really do a mistake, and you can actually see they're just coaxial speakers, like one-way speaker. The high end comes from the center, then the mid-range and the bass. So you don't get the phasing effect.
Yeah.
You don't have a sweet spot. My entire studio is sweet spot.
Oh wow!
It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit in the corner exactly and don't move. And 3 in the morning you're like mixing like this, and you just wake up and you play the track and the snare is gone.
Wow.
But yeah, so this is something from the past. And
it was really like a monitoring thing, and then you could just really hear what was going on and understand the impact of the choices you were making.
Absolutely. Cool. Even this entire thing starts from the browser, from the samples browser. By picking up the samples through such accurate system, you're already doing the mix down. Because otherwise, you could pick up some really shitty sample and make the track with it, and then try to fix it to the track.
Right.
But in this case, it's so much easier just picking up the right sounds, and you can make a sound with just a couple of channels much faster.
Great. Hey, we have a question in the chat from Dimitarmar, who's just saying about the metronome part and groove in electronic music is strict, but then in acoustic music, it could remove the emotion. So do you have any thoughts about that? How do you proceed? Just, you know, meshing those two worlds together.
So instead of using the metronome, just use a beat, get some loop from a funk library or something that has some sort of a groove, that all the notes are a little bit swinged around the grid, and this would give the musicians a lot more feeling. I don't usually record people on click. That's not my thing at all. I usually have about 100,000 demos around.
Right.
And when I have someone visiting the studio for a session, or we discuss starting a new project, I'll just pull out something from the PO and just play to them, and then they'll get into it and start performing straight away. Then I hit records and give it like the loop, so they record forever inside the same loop, and then later on I expand it and I start building around. Okay. This is my experience with jazz musicians. When they don't have a particular part in mind, they just follow the harmony and jam on top of it. Because I worked a lot with jazz musicians lately, and I just get this approach to them, and sometimes also finish track with arrangement and, hey, can you play saxophone on this one? And then they would just play, but I never do it with a click track.
Never just do donk, 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 or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And do you have like a recording set up in your studio there, or do you tend to go specific places to record? Or
I used to have before I got the kit.
Right.
Because my current studio is in the apartment where we live, and in the beginning it was kind of easier when the baby was just small and it would cry less, but now it's not crying, it's screaming all the time, like wow, getting excited over things. So I can't really work in my studio anymore, so I'm moving out in a week time actually. So if we do another beat battle, it's gonna be another environment next time. But
amazing.
Yeah, I'm getting a dedicated recording area with soundproofing done for recording as well. I mean, not recording drums and stuff, but just like a proper vocal booth and
right.
In general, a quiet place just for my music, so I can go there and feel like I'm going to work. I don't know how it works for everyone, but this is a big change for me. I've always been a bedroom producer, so now
this is your first dedicated place?
Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the move.
I just love what you're saying, just basically like when you're able to hear music in the right way. Did you have like lots of questions before? Were you struggling thinking maybe if I use this bit of equipment or that bit of equipment or compress things differently, then my music will sound good? Like were you banging up against this wall and then it was suddenly just when you could really clearly hear what was in there, all that stuff kind of vanished?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have no more places to question myself too much, because every single move of any slider is audible. You're not moving like the threshold 15% and you're like, I don't know.
Right.
there is no I don't know anymore. It's crazy, especially with the panning, because I work a lot with the panning in my tracks. Maybe 50% of the mixing process is done with panning sounds around and creating this atmosphere of like a real band playing. So you got everyone in their own frequency and own kind of part of the room. I love to play my mix downs with closed eyes without watching the details and just imagining if that would be real people in front of me, how they would respond to my ears and all this kind of psychoacoustics sometimes. But well, I don't know, with panning is the most important thing is to have the absolute accurate panning system in your studio. If you move the panning slider on a channel by 20% and you still don't think that this is to the one of the sides, then you gotta fix something about your studio.
Nice.
In the system, I got like I could hear 1%, 2%. It's crazy. Like so much space in between. Like between the two speakers, there is the whole universe.
Right. That's wild.
Also the sound cards, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta try like a coaxial setup because I talk to people a lot on the Twitch stream. Like I do 98% of my work on Avantones, like Oratones.
Yeah.
And just the fact that there's no crossover or anything like that. I don't know if that's what it is, but yeah, it's like, and I find the more kind of crossovers and the bigger your speakers are, like the more confused you get.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a good vibe. Wow. So, can I ask you like some other questions? Like, let's get a little bit kind of almost like musicological, and harmony and melodically thinking, right? Do you feel that there's like you have an approach to kind of melody and harmony that is, dare I say, like uniquely Bulgarian, or do you feel like in your part of the world in general? I mean, I mentioned before when I was playing the samples, like just the way that Asia does her harmonies is like very much like your part of the world, and that's very different to other spots. But like, did you find that influenced you straight away when you were doing electronic music and playing guitar as well? Like, I know that's a weird thing. It's like asking a fish what they think of the water that they're swimming in.
Yeah. For me, I would say, first of all, I'm not a musician. I have no idea what's that all about. For me, I mean,
I'm gonna get that on a T-shirt.
All I know, all I've learned in school and art academy is how to do this. You know, how to draw.
Okay.
So for me, music is composition of a painting. I don't have idea. I don't have any idea how to play piano. I just play. Just I'm not scared to fall. So I just play whatever I like, whatever feels right, and I record it and then edit it and do some music with it. But about the harmonies and all this stuff, I don't really understand them. I don't really care about the musicality inside because I have no clue.
Right.
Asia is my music guide on all the records. I mean, on all the tracks for the project, because she would sing a song and I would ask what's the notes, and she would, the first one is C, the second one is D, and I'm like, okay, C is here and D. This is D. Okay, D. So I know it's maybe not the best thing to say about myself. I like dropping people's expectation. Oh my God, this producer doesn't know the notes.
I love it. Yeah.
But for me, this is so important that I don't think like a standard musician. I don't follow any rules because I know no rules.
Amazing.
I only know the rules of good music. I've listened to thousands of records when I was a kid. I grew up in a room full of records. My brother was like a music collectionist, and so yeah, it was this world of music that passed through my ears, and like reading a lot of books and then writing your own book. Of course, you're gonna have a lot of influence. And yeah, so for the Bulgarian harmonies and the technical part, I can't really answer. But I can tell you that every time I hear these harmonies and the way they work, it resonates deeply with myself, because I'm, as you said, I'm the fish in this water. So I'm just mesmerized by the weirdness and the disharmony that works well in a way.
Yeah.
And I correlate directly with metal music, because when I was making this kind of stuff, I've listened to thousands of metal records, and I also have a metal project, like a side thing as well.
Oh, amazing.
Also pretty famous band in Bulgaria, whatever. But yeah, so with the Bulgarian harmonies and playing, putting the voices in, we call it a second, like when you play the white key and the black key right next to each other.
Yeah.
Usually people use it in horror movies. When you want to do the horror movie kind of pad, you just press it and you're like, whoa, it's spooky. But in Bulgarian music, it's like supernatural and beautiful in a way. Like one of the voices goes straight one note, and the other ones just jumping one note on top, one note below, and da 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 da. So it's like this kind of harmony that makes it unique.
Yeah.
That's what I know, because I've worked with the voices and I know how they sound. I can saw the tracks and hear like each one of them.
That's killer.
In general, I'm just like a big fan of Bulgarian folklore music, and it has this cosmic feeling, not just because of the Voyager record where there is the song from Bulgaria on there, but like in general, when I listen to this music, I'm not here. I disappear somewhere. I'm in the woods. I'm in the mountains. I'm in the nature.
Right.
For me, this is the sound of Bulgarian nature, and because I'm so related to my hometown, I grew up in the mountains, and I was just basically playing my entire childhood in the forest.
Wow.
So this kind of influenced me as an artist, and I don't know much about commuting in a big city. I'm always trying to be passing through the park and just get there as soon as possible. I've traveled the world as well. I've been to whatever place possible. Australia a couple of times, New Zealand, Mexico, USA. Europe was every weekend for me for like 10 years when I was DJing heavily. So I've seen a lot of places, and still when I hear Bulgarian music in these places, everything starts to appear and look like Bulgaria out of a sudden. And for me, this is important for Bulgarian people abroad to listen to have this message sent from Bulgaria, so they feel home. And when we did the USA tour with my Kanatica project, it was 2019. We was playing mostly for the Bulgarian community, and each one of them was just coming with tears in their eyes, like saying, "Wow, what an experience!" We was just for 1 hour during the concert, we was back home, and it felt so warm and nice. And we're not doing the cheap folklore kind of stuff, because that's also very easy to pick up and just become a pop star using the folklore songs. I'm always putting this underground feeling to them, and trying to build a more tense future for the listener. So so it's not music for each one around. I don't want to be like a pop star. I want to keep my, how to say, true artist kind of thing to the music.
Right.
I don't want to sell out. Just trying to how to say, to survive with what I love, with what I truly love, what I believe it's myself there.
Yeah. We mentioned this a few times in the build-up, but just so everyone knows, hopefully all the producers, like, you are going to be putting out a remix album in the pretty near future. So everyone, this is kind of unofficially official, but if Ivan or anyone else is like really feeling your remix, they might, or sorry, feeling your version, you might get an email hitting you up asking if you'd like to turn it into a full remix for official release.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's like researching like a bigger database about the gold that can come out of it, and I'm so glad that it happens, because I've always wanted to make a remix competition, but I never wanted to just let all the samples somewhere on a cloud and get thousands of versions. I wanted to interact a little bit with the people behind it. So this is a great chance to get to know some of the guys and listen to their versions now. So yeah, I'm doing the remix version of the album. I wanted to release it sometime in June or July. But maybe it's gonna be too soon for my schedule, because I just released the album, and
yeah, that's pretty close.
A little bit. Yeah. But we already had a remix from Carmen Rizzo.
Okay.
From LA, and he did an amazing job for the first single, for Swans to Trepti. He remixed it, and it was getting really good feedback on radio stations in the States. Also, the whole album is now rotating on radio stations in the States, so you could hear it on some NPR radio.
Oh, wow.
Accidentally.
That's great.
Yeah, it's my, how to say, effort to get my music out there in a way, and get some more people attracted to the Bulgarian folklore through this mix of styles and everything. With the remixes, back on the remixes, I've got really amazing producers doing their versions, and I'll be doing my own version with another project of mine to one of the songs, like getting completely chaotic in my head what's going on. But
that must be intense. Yeah.
I've done it for the Kanatica album. We got about 40 remixes for the remix version of the album.
Whoa.
And it went really well. Just people from all around the world, Japan, Mexico, and all of them I found myself, and I asked them to join the remix album. So it's a little bit different than remix competition, but I just wanted to see different angles on the music from completely different styles. I've asked some really experimental, glitchy artists. I've asked some proper drum and bass producers, others that are into the dubstep hype sound, and then trip hop, and even a band that they performed remix with instruments and resung the lyrics and everything.
Oh, wow.
So I'm open to any sort of interpretation, and yeah.
Well, this perfect way to like lead on to a big question I have for you, which is like, you have so many different projects. You do as well. You do like visual art. You also run a label.
2 labels.
2 labels. Okay. I'm just
like,
gonna go for a nap again and come back. Okay.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
So my big question is like, do you, just in terms of keeping your own head straight, like how do you kind of choose what you're working on next? And do you need to do anything consciously to be like, okay, now I'm working in this world and this is this is the kind of music I'm making now, or this is a project where it's happening for, like how do you kind of just go between all these different, not just creative worlds, but also like roles, like activities, and probably thinking about how to make a label successful is very different to thinking about making a melody work or something.
I guess this all comes from experience, releasing my music over the years for so many labels around the world. It got me into this comfort zone of putting my own label out and releasing my own music through the label. I can't really say that my label is super successful. It is for the big albums that I've released. I mean, some of them become really popular, as I said earlier, in Bulgaria. So that makes it somehow successful, but it's the music that's successful. It's not the label itself. The label is actually a partnership between me and the Ether Audio guys from my studio.
Right.
So because we work so close to each other, they mold my sound system, my gear. When I buy a new synth, it's going straight to them, and they open it and change all the components, so it becomes like a crazy new world. But anyway, so we decided to put this label together, and it's music created and mixed on these speakers, on this system. So it's made especially for people into the audiophile world that want to hear high-end audio.
Right.
But yeah, so how to survive in this mess in my head? Well, with music genres, it's very easy because I started with drum and bass back in the days. I made my name out there, became super successful in the hard drum and bass music. Hard in terms of mixing drum and bass with hardcore and metal, and just getting really intense parties going. So for this, I've done so many years, so many tours around the world, and so many records, about 100 vinyl records and maybe 200 drum and bass tracks released.
Wow.
So that got me a lot of how to say, experience with dealing with labels, dealing with payments, dealing with releases, schedules, vinyl, CD, digital, whatever. And at some point I was just fed up with this kind of music. I felt like the crowd will never grow up. I mean, when they grow up, they just fall off the stage.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I'm 25 now, I got my life together, bam, no more drum and bass. So it's, and I was already passing this 25 kind of 30 curve, and I was, what am I still doing here? That these guys, like, I'm playing for completely new people each year, which is kind of cool. You kind of educate young people to this music, but I can't say apart from the experience in the club, I gave them so much more. I didn't make them feel amazing while they're walking in the nature. I didn't make them feel grateful that they have something in their hearts and love and all this kind of stuff. It was all about banging heads and, So I said, okay, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. And I just stopped releasing this kind of music. Then I deleted my Facebook fan page that got about 15,000 people. I mean, not deleted it, but I kind of renamed it. It was Cooh something, and then I renamed to Ivan Shopov, and it became silent. Like 5,000 people signed out in the next week. Wow! Because they was like, "What the fuck is going on? No more drum and bass. Okay, bye bye." So I don't care. So saying goodbye to this career was intention that I had, and I would say kind of a brave strategy, because I was running out of this weekly DJ shows that I was getting good fee, and I was thinking to go more into making music and records that would stick with the time. Something a little bit more timeless, because each vinyl record, it's out, and like a couple of months people tell you this is old track already, and like, what the hell? Well, when you do an album that you put so much effort and detail into it, it's timeless. It never gets old. I mean, maybe in 20 years it will be like, oh, okay, listen, this sounds like old. But yeah, so this was like my main focus, switching genres and styles and crowds and type of work. I've always also wanted to have a family, so I didn't imagine myself getting to the airport every Friday and returning Sunday like a beat up potato. So I then sleep on Monday, wake up on Tuesday, Wednesday still blurry, and Thursday you have to pack your shit for Friday's flight. So it's not a sustainable kind of living that I wanted to quit, and that's how I got into different kind of projects. I started also making music for theater, for contemporary dance, and one of the leading composers for contemporary dance in Bulgaria. I've done about 30 contemporary dance pieces with the Bulgarian Trigaida dance company. We've won some prizes, and making this music is so much fun and such a bless that I could work with the choreographers and the dancers, the stage lights and everything. So telling stories through music for me became more important than figuring out how to make the loudest snare in the world. Which is like, okay, now, I mean, the battle continues. I still follow like the whole community, and every now I'm checking some tracks and like, okay, but I don't know, that's so much interesting now. But yeah, I also taking notes is important for everyone that is out there wondering how to keep schedule of all this. So like thousands of them all over the place. I have a couple of notebooks written all up, down, from the top to the bottom. And yeah, so it's important to keep track of what's going on.
It's interesting when you're talking about making the Trigaida album. It sounded like you just decided, like, this is what I'm doing. And did you pretty much just like work on it full time? Because, do you know, like, to get it done in that amount of time from like start to end, from like literally the project starting to having a finished album out, that must have been like just a very consistent focus on the... No?
No.
So are you doing a whole bunch of other things at the same time then as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've done, in the meanwhile, I did 3 soundtracks for contemporary pieces. I've done another 2 albums that are coming. I mean, how to say, like the starting versions of the albums. I started a new album just recently with Teodosi Spasov. That's going to be really epic. Eventually releasing it in 2 years, I don't know.
Right.
We don't have any deadlines, but once we got the ideas going. I started a new project with a violinist from Turkey, and she's playing also on the Trigaida records, violin on Maichinko and Konyo. So this one is like a blend of Turkish folklore music with electronica kind of stuff. But yeah, I've done it already. Like 19% of the job is done in about a month, because they also had like some sort of a deadline we had to rush. But I'm just super fast at making beats. It's,
right.
I just, in general, I don't have that much time anymore as well. Because being a father, I only got like 3 hours a day to work. So I have to be really efficient in this time period.
When you started making music, were you able to make music fast? And what was kind of like, what's your philosophy or what's your headspace to be able to make music fast? So I don't know about you, but when I started, I'd spend like 3 days on a bass line and then like 2 days layering synths on a chord progression, and then like a month later figure out it wasn't any good.
Well, for me, how to say, my approach to electronic music was very ghetto at the beginning. I didn't have my own computer for maybe 6 years into music production. I mean, I was introduced to a program called Rebirth. You know it, of course, from Popwarhead. And they gave it to me on a floppy. One of the band members in my metal band, he was like, "Hey guys, I got a computer at home." I was like, "What is a computer?" "Okay, let me show you." So my hometown, Bulgaria, post-communistic country, we just went out of the darkest couple of years of complete misery and poor nothingness, empty stores and all this shit. So having a computer was like, you're fucking rich, you know. So 98 was the first time I saw a computer, and the first time I touched the computer mouse was in front of Rebirth.
Wow.
And so that was my my first experience with the computer. I never played computer games. I never went to any computer game clubs to play any sort of multiplayer or whatever. But I was using the computer game clubs for making music. So once he got me the demo on a floppy, I was going around my hometown looking for this kind of clubs and going there with headphones and my tape recorder.
No way.
And dropping in the floppy, and it's a demo version, so you can't say shit.
Yeah.
I just pay for 3 hours to use the computer.
Whoa.
And I start from scratch. You know, you remember the default setting of the melody was like, I still remember it like a nightmare, because every day I was starting with this, and I would mess for an hour to make my own patterns, and then I would press record on the tape and start messing around, like jamming with the software, like it's a real synth. Oops, sorry for the mic. And this got me into this kind of a workflow. Okay, you have 1 hour, you have to have something. You can't just lose time messing around for hours, because also I didn't have money, so that was all my breakfast cash. I was just starving, going to school and then jumping into the computer club and coming back with tapes running.
Wow.
So I could play them on my home stereo, and that was my like maybe 2 years of my life in my hometown. Was just doing this. Then I wanted to go to Sofia, to the capital, and study arts in the National Academy of Arts, like the biggest high school, university, sorry, not high school. And then I met a friend of mine. I mean, I didn't know him back then, but at the art classes, another friend, whatever. So we met with this producer from Sofia, and he was, hey, I make also drum and bass. So we exchanged tapes. He listened to my tapes. I just discovered how to make the Amon breaks.
Right.
And there was also mods in the latest Rebirth version, so I could play with real Amon breaks and chop them up and make some crazy jungle thing. But yeah, so we exchanged tapes, and then he showed me Fruity Loops, and I started learning about it. And a couple of years later, we had few albums released, because I was the same. I would never think this is shit. I would just do it, enjoy it full time, and leave it and jump onto a new song. And if something doesn't work, then File New was my best friend, and still is. I got this approach to music, never being too picky about certain elements, just going with the flow. If there is no flow, give it a day, call it a day, come another time, jump in quick. Also using sometimes drugs helped me through the process. Being stuck, back in the days, I used to smoke pot, so I would get high as possible and just make music, like wouldn't get out of the chair for like a couple of hours each day. And I remember it was a significant boost in my career when I got signed for the biggest drum and bass label in this hard drum and bass kind of thing. I just made the song super high, showing a friend of mine, Reason, because after Rebirth I moved to Reason, and I made so many records with Reason, and I was just showing him, oh, you can make this this melody. You don't even have to use the keyboard, man. Just click on the mouse, press record, and hit the key, and a melody will be born. And that's how I made a melody in a drum and bass track of mine that later on became so famous. That I would play in Porto for like 2,000 people, and they would sing it like da 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 da. It's one note, but the sequence was important, and it worked really well for the song. So it made me super famous into this gender-specific kind of music. And when the label said, okay, you're now signed to Position Chrome, you have to provide us with more material. And I was like, what? Oh my God, is that for real? So in one summer, I got signed in April. They told me to do this in May. So from May till September, I made 80 finished drum and bass tracks. 80.
That's crazy.
It was like a folder. And I released it almost 90% of the tracks.
Wow.
So in a couple of months.
And that's still like a few hours each? You just kind of sit down and just go bonk, bonk, bonk and...
Yeah.
Wow. Damn.
Wake up in the morning, make a track, make another one in the afternoon.
Wow, that's amazing. So what was your approach like for doing arrangements and stuff? Would you kind of like just mute stuff live, or would you kind of sequence things out?
I would always sequence. I always start with a loop. With all the elements possible, like a finished track, but it's just very short. And then I will mute different parts and see if they work together or not, or if there's a part that doesn't work now, I would keep it for the outro, for the intro, for the breakdown. So quickly mapping my arrangement while doing the loop, and then I would usually just duplicate it 100 times and start deleting the main parts and building up some sort of structure.
Awesome.
So that way I could have the arrangement done in an hour.
Brilliant.
And I'm kind of, how to say, if I could also participate in the beat battle, I would be done in 2 hours. That's more than enough for me to have a whole song.
That's amazing. That's wild. And so I'm so curious about like this crossover then from just like floppy disk in a computer, like handing over your money at the counter, to like I'm gonna get like these Ether Audio like custom built speakers. Like what was like your frustration or whatever? Or was it just you hadn't heard it before and you went to their studio and you were just like, whoa? Or had you been like struggling with anything before that?
I've been struggling with translating my mixes to other systems because I mean just using the standard gear didn't give me that much transparency that I would believe this is finished mix down and mastering that I could play everywhere and it will sound the same. Of course, I was playing also every weekend and all the new tracks. Sometimes I was forcing myself to build an entire new set over the week so I could play fresh tracks over the weekend. And I've done it a million times.
Wow.
Like with the 70 tracks, I was traveling already to a couple of festivals and there was new sets. Like I was famous for not playing other people's tracks and still banging like the set, and the crowd is like, what the hell is going on? Like building myself a highlight into this kind of parties with just completely new fresh material each week.
Wow.
And then signing it to 100 labels. But anyway, so at some point I was not happy with how my mixes would translate to car stereos and other places, especially for my deeper stuff, not for the drum and bass. Drum and bass kind of nailed it because I could sound check it every weekend and mix it together with another track, so I know how good or bad it sounds, and then sometimes I fix it again. But yeah, for my other music, for the Bulgarian folklore kind of infusion and all this kind of stuff, I was sometimes confused that the vocals are too loud or the flute is too dull, and I couldn't get it right. And then we visited the studio of Ether Audio, and when I heard my music there, I felt like somebody stripped the clothes and you could hear each element so clear, and the mistake.
So you could just say,
so
oh,
big.
I need to do this and this, like it was just obvious.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and what they did at the beginning, they asked me if I want to hear better. I would bring my sound card, so they updated the converter and the audio components inside. And when I came back, I was like, "What the hell?" Like the stereo was 100% wider. And I could position better the sounds. And then I made a completely new mix down for the whole album. And then I went again, we listened, and I could hear more mistakes. I was putting down notes. Yeah. Then there was, okay, let me fix your speakers. And I was using the Dynaudio BM6, right, I think.
Classics.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, classics. Yeah. So they opened it straight, like, okay, speaker, okay, boom, unscrewed, pulled it out. I was like, oh, no. I spent all my money on these boxes. Yeah. How can you do this? But then he was throwing stuff out because the engineer from Eteraudio, he's a genius. He was saying that all this mass production gear, to make it affordable and still marketplace, they have to build an amazing sounding product, but then they have to build it in China with all the components, with all the cheap components. Right. To make the price down. Right. So by architecture, it's okay. It's meant to be great. But because of the marketing stuff, they had to pull it down. Otherwise, such speaker with all the high-end components would cost 10 times more, and nobody would buy it. So it would just be. This continues. Adam Audio was doing this kind of stuff. Their first speakers were like super. The clarity and the production on them was super nice, and then later on they was just dropping down the line and making it much more mass product. Yeah. But yeah, everybody has to survive on this market. So yeah, with Eteraudio they was just updating the speakers with the latest high-end components, and they would sound so much better. It was crazy. Wow. So I would mix the whole album again, and that was 2009 for my first record as Volkansky. And for a few years, I was working with this updated version of my speakers and sound card. And then I bought a new sound card, the RME, and it was sounding so much bass was coming out of it. I was like, "Ooh, yay, bass, drum and bass," you know. But then my tracks didn't receive more bass. Right. They were I was just feeling it more in the studio, and then I realized that okay, this is not correct. We have to do something about it, so it got updated as well. And to the point, I've made a drum and bass album. I wanted to check it on their speakers, and I went there and was like, oh damn, everything sounds like one piece of nothing, like a mess. Like no detail, no how to say, transparency between the sounds. And I was, what the hell is going on? And then I remember he played me a record from Mr. Bill, you know, this amazing Australian producer. Yeah. And I was like blown away by the clarity and the depth and the length of each sound was so detailed. For the first time I could hear the exact length of each sample and the volume and everything. So I got really hooked up and I was like, okay, fuck it, I'm selling my old speakers, my something else, and I was getting some money from the gigs, so I decided to put it all into these new speakers. And I remember the first few tracks I did in a couple of hours, just picking up through the sample pack, and like, oh, damn, done. But yeah, since then a lot of things updated. The sound card they made is next level for me. If you're interested, I can give a little bit more details about it. It's basically super simple. It's a box that has one output. Wow. It has left and right channel. Yeah. And actually the DAC, the converter inside is a chip from 82.
Whoa.
One of the, yeah. But it, they used it to build around their own vision of sound, to become the most transparent DAC ever. So it doesn't have drivers because the chip itself is like before the the whole Windows era and all this
right.
stuff. So you plug it into the computer and it just plays.
Wow.
It's crazy. You can't adjust latency. I mean, you can adjust the latency because it's something the computer does. But still, like the sound is beyond incredible. It's just outside of this world. You got so much detail, so much presence, so much transparency. It's insane. And they explained to me that the most important thing about converter is to do the left and right channel correctly. And the modern sound cards, all of them, one chip is doing inputs, outputs, like all the crazy processing, that because they want to sell you a product that you can record a band, and it's not devoted to just left and right output. So all this extra processing and gear that they have to put inside all the components, it just makes the sound move slower and become less defined.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So this is like the general audiophile concept.
Crazy. I love it. I love it. I'm really actually CIV Music Zach, who's in Calgary in Canada, had a question before. So Zach, sorry it took us a while to get back to this one. He was just asking about like favorite synths, and is that an MS-10 or an MS-20 in the background? Can we ask you some?
Yeah, it's the MS-20, the original one from '82, I think. I bought it off eBay for some good money back in the days. And I use it for my bass lines mostly because I never heard anything so solid and so, how to say, trustworthy.
That's a good adjective.
And actually, I never patch it in a way that it's meant to be a bass line. I just play with the resonance, and once I find the spot where I get the most sub bass out of it, then I would just sample it and tune it into C, and then I would use the resonance again to tune it to another note. So I do it note by note.
Damn.
I don't play the like funky bass line kind of thing.
So it's not just like you tune one thing to a note and then just play that across the keyboard. You're literally building them note by note. And is that pure resonance, like just the feedback of the filter with like no oscillator, or with a filter and get it to the point where
well, it's the resonance almost like how to say, like 3 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah.
The resonance goes 3 o'clock, and then the cutoff is maybe 6, 7, 8 kind of thing. So you fine tune it there,
right?
And it's the most solid sub bass I could ever.
Which waveform? Like, just I'm just looking at mine at the moment. The triangle wave going in with just like, and then finding the right.
Finding the right one, and then introducing the second oscillator for harmonic content. So if you need some harmonics, but I never patch it with cables. Sure. I just do the 2 knobs kind of trick and move on.
Right.
I sample it right away. I don't care about the patch. I never save patches.
Cool. Yeah.
On synths. I always resample. That's my workflow as well. That's why I'm so quick. I never have the option to open the synth and automate something later on, because I don't save it. I just print it into audio and that's it.
Great.
If I want another one, I keep the MIDI, I open another VST or another hardware synth, run the stems, print it, and then I got a bunch of audio clips that I could play around. I was also explaining this technique in the production network about using the reverb as an external processor, and how I'm jamming around with the MIDI, running through the analog synth reverb, and then recording the results, and having this library of sound that I could process further in Ableton.
Nice. And like you'll do like a big recording, so it's like a big recording with lots of tweaks, and you grab the bits you like, kind of thing. Right.
And also, I'll show you my favorite synth. It's this Virus C, something like this. So it's a Virus synth, but it's molded by Ether Audio. So it has the valves in there. These guys, they see them?
That is insane. What?
Yeah, man. And this, it's also the whole chip inside the converter is completely jacked off.
What? That is wild.
Yeah, It's in a new body as well. It has a whole layer of electronics beneath.
Wow.
So yeah, the valves make it sound completely out of this world.
That's
because
wild.
Just the audio path going through this multi-bit conversion and the valves is.
So it's a different. It's a different converter, or they kind of change the components around the converter chip.
Yeah, they change the components around it, and still the original output is there. So you could do A/B. They kept it so I can show to people what's their work done.
Wow.
And I mean, I could also compare every kind of sound card in my studio. Like, okay, listen to the Apollo Twin. Oh, nice. Oh, wow, yeah. And now listen to the RME, and good. And now listen to this. Like, what?
Wow, that's nuts.
Yeah. So with the virus, it's so full of sound and stereo and everything that usually when I make music with it, I just need like one take, and I hardly process, I hardly EQ it, because when you have a sound recorded with this clarity and this how to say spectrum of sound inside, like completely full blown out everything, it feels so much the gap between the sounds that it becomes like a, how to say, it's enough on its own, so we don't have to add million other things to it to make it nice.
That's wild.
But
and so
I got it connected with the MIDI.
And do you pretty much, is it like MS-20 and the virus are doing like the majority of your synths, or are you using like a bunch of other stuff? Or you're okay, those are like your favorites?
Those are my favorite hardware synths. Then I have a ton of modular stuff.
Okay, yeah.
I got this little rig over here that is like my desktop kind of synths. I love the plates and rings and clouds, and this is like the more like easy to travel kind of case. Then I got the shared system by Make Noise, and I got another bunch of cases. I used to have like a huge case, like I don't know, what was it, 16 stages or something, 16U, I don't know. And then I sold it because I needed money to invest into the production of my previous album. And I kept all the models in boxes. So when I have a modular gig, I just take the cases and rearrange models and put on some crazy quick sketches on a patch, and then I run to the gig with it.
Wow. Amazing.
But yeah, so I don't have a favorite synth from the modular. I have a favorite combination maybe. But when I do music fast, as I said earlier, I do it all in Ableton. And my favorite synth over there is Operator. I do most of my bass lines with it and sound design in there. Also, I love a Reactor. That's my favorite synth ever. I mean, I'm since I started using Cubase back in 2004, it was my favorite VST. I couldn't live without it. I was just getting all the crazy sounds, because back then I didn't know much about using the internet and finding samples and sounds. And then a friend of mine showed me a Reactor, and I was like, dude, I don't need samples anymore. That's it. I could make my own sounds 24/7.
So would you build like your own kind of ensembles and stuff? No. Or just because there's so many in there, you can get every kind of sound in the world?
Yeah. To begin with, I was using all the built-in stuff, and I was just learning how to use them properly. But then later on, I figured out about the website, and I've downloaded about 60 gigabytes of ensembles. And so it's like a favorite thing of mine, starting a new project, going to the website, finding all the latest ensembles, and just getting lost a little bit about creators and their other synths and downloading shit. Then opening the session, running Reactor, resampling each one of them, closing them. I don't even remember where I got the samples.
Oh, right. So, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's like a modular kind of situation. I mean, you don't remember exactly which oscillator made what, but
like when you're starting a project, you'll just record a ton of stuff and then like
Yes.
build kind of a library. Then when you switch into like production mode,
Yeah.
you'll go and grab stuff and build tracks out of those.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I do the same with the modeler.
Yeah.
With any, basically, if I want to go more gender specific, then I would use some of my sample packs or some sample packs that I downloaded and loved so much. But if it's something completely new and fresh and weird, then I would just start with Reactor and continue. Also, I use it a lot for processing, using it as an effect processor. And in my Ableton Live setup, I have it always by default on the first channel, Reactor, always turned off, by the way, because it's eating my CPU. But still, when I need it for something crazy, weird, quick, I'll just turn it on, run the channel through the first channel, and record it straight into audio and mute it again.
So you like open it up and you're straight into record before you even...
Yes.
Right.
I don't even...
I love that.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just sometimes record and switch presets, and all things that spit out, I'll be like, oh, shit, stop. Okay, enough.
Yeah.
Okay, drop this and chop it up.
Right.
So it's like really, how to say, I want to be inspired by the process. I want to get this kind of, how to say, freshness, like, hey, you do it now. Now is now. You can't really change anything later, but that's cool.
Yeah.
And also my CPU loves me because this iMac is from 2010.
Oh, wow, and it's still going strong? Amazing.
Yeah, I run 100 tracks in this way. I mean, I don't have almost any synths running in my sessions. Everything is bounced down or frozen. And since I got the UAD cards, I can run all the best effects outboard, so they don't eat my CPU. So it's super relaxed.
That's great. And actually, Orb Kill Alters is just asking, like, for your mixes, is that with analog subbing or all in the box?
Well, analog subbing just arrived last week.
Oh, really?
It's the SSL6. If you know this little tiny mixer, it's so powerful. It has so much features inside such a small body, and it's my next thing for making analog summing mixes, because that's the last step I'm not happy with working inside the box. The way I hear the music and the way I listen to it when it's bounced out. And the digital summing, the computer summing kind of sucks. You lose maybe 5% of the details. And because I listened in such high-end environments, I could hear the difference between the bounces. And actually the best bounce strategy I found for Ableton is bouncing real time. And here is a little bit of a crazy tip for people that want to get the best out of their Ableton bounces. Turn off your internet and shut off any kind of program. It makes your bounces better. It's crazy, but we proved it here with, just listening though, not doing the spectrum and all that crazy stuff.
Right.
We did A/B, blind test, whatever. Just the CPU rotating, doing all the tasks, and heavily overloaded by crazy internet shit, makes your sound a bit more, how to say, like all the elements a little bit detached. But it's something that I understand about mixing and mastering and in general music production. What's weird that I hear more than most people, I think, is the time. Because the time is the most important constant in music, because music is time. It's not numbers. And usually people are like, oh, well, you see, it's written here, it produces 90 hertz, and it's like the most accurate number, blah, 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 and no jitter and all this kind of stuff. And then you listen to the sound card, to the product, and you're like, but the music is kind of messy, doesn't, like the timing is wrong. Some sounds arrive faster than others, but in like tiny, almost like cycle kind of situation.
Yeah.
So with this system, you could hear the time much more precise. And for example, USBs, like the USB cables I use, they're also built by the by the Ether Audio guys, and they sound so much better.
Wild.
You can't imagine.
Yeah.
Like a standard to this one.
So
yeah,
I'm wondering, like, if you're going into analog summing, are you needing to use all the ether converters on all the channels that are going out to the box then? Yep. And then did they do A to Ds as well?
Yes, they did A to D, but they again have left and right recording channel. I mean, you can't do multi.
Right.
If you want to do more outputs, then you need to use more DACs.
Right.
Because the DAC itself only shows up on the computer as one driver and one left and right channel. But you can do arpeggiate device and hook like 5 of them. But this is also something that's important about the quality of this product, is because the USB corresponds to just this left and right channel. So if you want to use another DAC, you need to plug another USB. But then the whole system gets a little bit overloaded with feeding all the USBs.
Yeah, totally.
So, like mechanics, hardware to software relationship, it's super important when you're mixing down. So for the moment, with the analog summing, I use the UAD, UX, and also the output converters are molded by Ether Audio, but also the Pole Twin outputs, and I have 8 stereo channels, and that's more than enough for the time being.
So the Ether guys are modding your UA stuff, is that right?
Yeah,
amazing. So they're like, you can just send them anything and they'll just like pull it apart and. That's so crazy.
And just make it sound better.
Wow, that's wild. That's wild. It's funny. I mean, like, I've really like largely avoided converters as much as possible when I'm working. Like, I think it's like, for me, I found you get almost better stuff if you just treat it well in the box rather than like going out and back in, because you get that whole weird thing that happens. Have you ever noticed, like, I have a thing where like if you record a square wave out of a converter and plug it straight back in, probably not the ether ones, but it's like in the computer it's like a flat line, then it goes up and goes bump bump, but then when you see it back in, you have that little thing before it even hits, it goes and then it jumps up. It's like it's kind of crazy. So yeah, I kind of just avoid them wherever possible, and I'm almost like, if something's going out to analog, then it's going to get messed up, so like it doesn't matter as much, you know. Who knows?
Well, I never looked into spectrums, and I don't make music. I don't mix music with spectrum analyzers, and in general, I don't look at the waveforms that much. I only care about what I hear and
I was only doing waveforms to line up the starts. So if I'm sending stuff out to a bit of analog hardware, and then it was like sliding back and forth, I'd like draw on a little click to go and pull it back straight into phase, and then you're like, hang on, what the hell is this stuff before it? You know what I mean? Kind of nuts. But yeah, I agree. I don't use spectrum stuff either. I just use a loudness meter for my listening copies, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's for the final.
Yeah, for your final, like put your limiter on that much or whatever. That's really wild. So if you're using, if you've had like just a couple of inputs, are you using the mixer behind you just to like bring all your different sources together into those couple of inputs?
Into the so I basically send the groups of the channels, drums, bass, synths, vocals, for example. If I have another spare channel, I would add maybe a flute, or depends on the project really. And then I would turn around the mixer so all the channels have fed into it, and then I would record on the stereo channel into Ableton, and then grab the audio file from the recording folder and rename it, and that's it.
Right.
I'm not re-exporting because I'm trying to avoid the actual mathematics Ableton is doing.
Right.
So it's just like super old school, like a kind of a tape recorder approach. You grab this piece of tape and then you take it somewhere.
So, oh hell no, Orbital. This is a weird thing, Orbital. I've actually, a group of friends and I, at various points throughout the years, if we had a chance to get some analog summing stuff, we've always done like blind tests, and it's like, okay, here's 4 audio files, A, B, C, D, and just like, which ones do you like? and all of us always pick the same one. As this one's really nice and analog and super wide and depth of field, and I can hear it really well. And every single time we've done it, that's been the digital bounce. But I believe that a lot of that is really just like, it's like you say, you get the converter smear. I've found things like your analog summing might sound better when you're hearing it straight directly to your monitors, but then once you go through another round of D to A to D, D to A, then it winds up sounding worse. But there's all these variables, so it's like if you're using beautiful converters to get there, that's where it's like I try to avoid the analog conversion until it goes to my mastering people, who's normally Emily Lazar, who has like all the good stuff, so it sounds great. You know what I mean? But then you'll get like analog summing boxes that actually do something to the circuitry, or you know, they actively add something which can be great. So yeah,
I think that's the SSL because I got it as a tip from a great friend of mine, Maxim Anokin. He's also a featured artist on the Trigaida album, and he just signed for John Frescante's label, and he was rebuilding his entire studio around analog summing and hardware. So because he wanted to get this extra dirt and warmth out of his Ableton stems. So I was the mastering engineer for one of his latest records, and I was like, man, the mixes sound so airy, so much space between the channels. Like, what's going on? He was, I didn't tell you. Okay, it's the SSL 6
oh, no way, that's awesome.
Bounces. And I was like, okay, well, this sounds incredible. I want one of these. But then I was still like skeptical because I went on the website and I saw like 1,500 euros. I was like, maybe later. I don't know. I have to buy a baby car. But then he sent me one of the tracks for a remix, and he sent me the Ableton project, and I heard it before going to the SSL, and I was like, dude, it was such a tremendous difference. Like completely different. Like so much shittier in many ways. Like not that much stereo. Like the definition between sounds was lost. It was just like a digital playground kind of. I don't know. And then I A/B'd the mix through the SSL, and this Ableton version, it was like the day and night. And that's when I clicked buy.
Right. And I mean, is that box doing? Is it doing more than like just summing? Are they doing like some cool SSL things to actually like give it some character?
They have the on the first two channels. They have the built-in compressor and EQ from SSL.
Right.
And then they have a G series bus compressor on the master with So it's a two-knob version with just threshold, and but then this also glues the sound super nice. And you have also breakout at the back of the mixer that you can hook up another 8 channels, I think.
Oh, cool.
So in total you can sum down about I think maybe 12 stereo channels, but something like this. I'm not exactly sure. Still didn't read the manual too detailed. But yeah, through all this commutation here, you can do all the routing, and it's super complex at the beginning, but once you get your head around, you can actually get the job done.
That looks really cool. And actually, Tom, the SSL Sigma is one that I tested in my studio, and I found it really weird, and I didn't prefer it. Also,
what is
the Sigma is like, it's one that you can control all the levels from the DAW. I think it's like 16 channel summing. It's just like a rack box. Like, it looks amazing on paper. But I found that, I mean, I wrote them all these emails at the time. This is like a long time ago now as well. But I found it was like, if you turn something down a dB in Pro Tools, I wound up running tones, and it was like coming back at different levels, like the changes. And it's funny as well, you know, because it's like when people are like, the analog summing, you just like change levels and it's so much better. And I was like changing levels with the control, going like, wow, this is really different. And then it wound up like, but I sent them, I assume there's like some bugs or something like that going on. But I like the fact that your box is like doing something, so it's like a level of being able to kind of like enhance and improve your sound. So
yeah, because it's just a analog summing box. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
so I think
twisty and faders.
Yeah, that's what I kind of really want to encourage people to think about, is like, just analog summing on its own, just the pure thing, it's like, that's all very nice. But it's like, if we're talking about like Neve analog summing, then it's running through like some Neve channel amplifiers that have a tone and transformers, or if it's, do you know what I mean? So I think people can get sometimes, you know, it's like your big breakthrough is like, now I can really hear what's happening. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like you're able to kind of like iterate from there very kind of precisely. And sometimes I think, I'm only saying this from experience, I've had like a big chunk of time where I was like, oh my god, I can't make a record because I've just heard about this thing that makes something sound good, and I don't have it. And that's why my mixes are shit, if you know what I mean. So,
no. Yeah.
So it's that fine line where things do matter and they also totally don't matter. But analog summing wise, that's really kind of my stance, is like, if it's actively doing something, then yeah, you're going to get the thing out of it. But to not over mystify it or anything. Absolutely. That's cool. I mean, also the other thing, just letting everyone know, like I produce, well, I program in Ableton, I'll record and do stuff in Pro Tools, but I've been mixing in Pro Tools since like 97, and I've found so many different tricks to get it to sound different. So it's like, awesome. It's just like if you've been on a Neve or an SSL or a big console for like 20 years, you'll really understand all the different tricks you can do to get it to sound different. But I mean, I'm finding this really fascinating, and I'm really want to check out those speakers, I have to say, and haven't said that for about 10 years, so that's pretty cool.
Wow.
I have another question for you. I really love the kind of evolution of going from like the floppy disk and the computer co-ops through having like your own computer and stuff. And when you're talking about like your sound developing from the drum and bass stuff that you were doing, and you're talking about like when you wanted to do something deep. So I'm kind of interested in like as your music deepened and expanded, like were the ways that you're needing to treat sound, like mix or whatever, to get that sound communicated, did you find as your music got more complicated, it was like took more time to mix? Or with your drum and bass stuff, was it like using drums and like a bass line and one noise and that was it, so it's kind of like raw?
Wow, that's a pretty long answer down here, because I would say depends on the genre, and the specific style in drum and bass. It gets really extremely complex to control all the craziness, all the noise. I mean, it's like mixing a metal record. Right. Imagine Meshuggah or something, just all the crazy guitars and the drums, and you like have to make space for each element to go. So it's a completely different production aspect. That's where you focus mainly on a loop and just get the snare, cut through the bass line, but like how much it's cutting, then stop it, then go away, listen to some reference track, then come back, oh, it's shit, okay, let's make it now again, blah, blah, blah. So sometimes it takes hours. If you experiment and you create your own thing, then it's more flawless, like seconds, minutes. But when I started making more of this deep experimental music, I felt the freedom to not follow all these rules, and that gave me all the space I needed. Because with drum and bass, you always have to follow certain mix-down rules and certain style directions. And I was lucky enough to make my own style, and I got a huge following over the years for this kind of style. Even they give it a name, and it was like expanding. So that's why it became also successful. I wasn't just copying someone else's mix-downs and tricks and sound design. I made my own palette of sounds, and people started copying them. Even the bigger producers than me, they was like, hey, I want to sound like Cooh now, because he's the new thing, whatever. So so that was like totally different approach. And then when I make my deeper stuff, I just feel this freedom of experimenting, and I don't care that much about mixdowns anymore. I care about the musicality and the elements corresponding to each other, and the message. Because in drum and bass there is no message. What's the message? We are all robots and we all gonna die. I mean, more or less. Or okay, here is a nice harmony, la la la, an angel, for the intro, and then jig jig jig, whoa, all the heavy stuff coming. So okay, all angels are dead. We continue. I mean, we did a lot of fun tracks in there. It was when you got this following, you can also start experimenting more and feel free to just drop in any kind of weirdness, and people will just laugh at it and get like, oh, this is crazy. But with the deeper stuff, I would just again just implement more musicality, more like experience, more spirituality as well. I would focus more on the message of how you can get this music somewhere else and do something really interesting. And some of the best feedback I got for an album of mine back in the days, the first one with Bulgarian folklore, was I played the record on repeat and I was drawing my entire night. So, wow, I mean, that's where I come from. I play music and I draw when I draw. I'm not just drawing on my own. I'm always accompanied by music. So, and yeah, the production. Maybe I got lost a little bit into the question, but
well, no, I think you really answered it. It's kind of like the evolution of sound combined with like the evolution of your methodology and the way you listen and the way that you communicate. That is really fascinating. Yeah. We had a question back here for Trouble Giver the First. He's saying, did Ivan apologize to the Lost fans on Facebook when he switched careers? So I guess when you switched your name.
Well, yeah, I made a dedicated Cooh fan page that kind of bounced back nicely with about 3,000 people pretty quick. So I think people was losing something but gaining something, because at the drum and bass page I only post about drum and bass, and I don't get people confused all the time with my side projects. And now it's like peaceful place to because you know, at the time I was doing a lot of dubstep records around 2010 2011. I was getting my name out on pretty good labels for the dubstep hype, but I was doing such heavy dubstep. It was like crazy heavy metal dubstep kind of thing, alongside the deeper like folklore whatever. But with the heavy dubstep, I was also playing it at my drum and bass shows. In the beginning, it was a complete shocker for the drum and bass people, because it would just slow down the tempo but hit harder, because there was more space between the kick and the snare, and there was more bass. So it was like, so that was a lot of fun, and people was like commenting mostly on the dubstep tracks, and to a point that I was really inspired and I started releasing more, but it was a different name. Balkansky was for the dubstep, Cooh was for the drum and bass. To a point in Czech Republic, I played a pretty huge festival, and I again played my dubstep part in the middle of the set, and I had like 20 people replying in the comments like, we hate dubstep, Balkansky, stay home. I was like, okay, so only Cooh allowed, only drum and bass allowed.
That's so funny. You reminded me of the whole like message board club music fans or whatever, where they get like so mad. Friends of mine had this project called Evil 9, and when they started like switching up their sound, they're just saying like, there's fans coming to them at shows saying like, play New School Breaks, play New School Breaks, and they're like playing like a the subgenre. Kind of wild. So did you do like a post just saying like, hey guys, like I'm gonna do all my music and I'm gonna do all this stuff over here, and if you want to talk about this is like just for this very specific thing, and you send them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
And there was guys replying, you can split however, I'll follow you everywhere. I mean, so most of the comments was really supportive. Some of them was like, I don't know what the fuck is going on anyway. It's just schizophrenia all over the place.
Totally. Nice.
For my own sake, I feel better now, because even if I lose more fans, I stopped looking at the numbers. I was going to therapy as well, going through some mental issues, just figuring out who I am and what I'm doing, because this ego tripping, being a rock star, rocking off stages every week, and finding who you really are, not the image that people project on you. I had a kind of a struggle with it, also with women, and how to find the way to to approach them without being the famous guy. You know,
Right.
it was bugging me. So at this point, when I had some mental breakthroughs, I decided, okay, so simple. Fuck this guy, cool. And
Amazing. Wow.
like, fuck my career. I don't care.
Yeah.
I want to build a family. I want to meet the right person. I want to be here now. And I also started meditating and discovering new paths towards myself. And that's when I for the first time I stopped and I didn't look at my watch for a day. It was like, oh my God, it's crazy. I can't believe I'm doing this.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah. So.
And when was that? When was that switch? Like around 2010, were you saying, or?
Oh no, it was 2017.
Okay.
The big set.
Oh wow. Damn.
Yeah. It was after I released the Kanatic album, the successful folklore kind of thing. And from all the feedback, I was even more motivated to continue in this direction instead of pushing it to the hard drum and bass and receiving comments like sick, oh my God, sick. I mean, that's kind of cool. To a certain age, I'm nearly 40 now, and I'm kind of like done with the teenage replies.
Yeah.
And I just want to get people touched by the music, to feel something inside, and to have good time with the music, to remember it, to attach it to really valuable memories, like a love story, like a hike, like something that I would appreciate as well. Not necessarily a club night that you don't remember in the morning because you're so high.